Ever wonder how the pros get those mesmerizing long exposure shots and achieve that dreamy cinematic motion blur when it comes down to one essential tool? Yep, I am talking about your ND filter. But there's a catch. When you use them incorrectly, they'll cost you a perfect shot. Stick around and we'll unveil the mysteries of ND filters and uncover the common mistakes that you might be making with them. First up, what is it? What does it do? An ND filter is just like putting a pair of sunglasses onto your camera lens. It reduces the amount of light coming through to the lens, allowing you to control your exposure, especially when you're doing something like video where you need to keep your shutter speed at a steady rate. Now, how does this magic work? Well, ND filters come with different strength measured in a thing called stops. And if you've watched my light guide, you'll know all about those. But if you haven't, I'll pause. It's like having a dimmer switch on your camera. So ND stops, or neutral density stops, refer to the measure of light reduction produced by the ND filter. Each stop is representing a half of the amount of light that will reach the camera sensor, and understanding the ND stops is essential to selecting the right filter strength to achieve the exposure that you're looking for. Now, it can get a bit complicated, so just bear with me, go grab a drink, okay, and I will explain it to you. So here's how it works. One stop reduces half the light, so that if your camera's setting produced a well-exposed image at 1/1000 shutter speed, f8, and an ISO of 100, then putting a one-stop filter would require adjusting the exposure settings down to 1/500, because we're going to halve it because we've halved the amount of light going in. And when we do two stops, we'll need to do that again. So we'll need to then come down to 1/250. And each time we do this, we've got to halve it again. This pattern continues with everyone, and it can go up to 5 stop, 10 stop, 100 stop, and you can go on to do solar stuff, which is like 1,000 stops, because obviously you've got very bright light. Understanding this stop allows you to precisely choose which amount of light you want to stop going through, which enables you to get long exposure, because obviously you're reducing that shutter speed down, or you've got a fixed shutter speed and you need to be able to tweak it. Now, general rule of thumb is when it comes to the filters, there are two types. You've obviously got fixed and you've got variable. Fixed will have a static amount it'll stop 2. So it'll a quarter of the original lights coming through, and that's the way it goes. However, a variable ND filter will allow you to adjust it on the fly on camera just by turning the dial. So if you can see, and it will then go much darker and much lighter, so it becomes see-through. You don't know the maths, then a variable ND filter, you can just eyeball it and you'll know. Where if you've got a fixed one, you're going to need to know which one to pick, and these generally do come in sets. What I will say is having a variable ND filter, if you're going to do something like film, I would say is pretty much like having a Swiss Army knife in your what's it, because you don't know what the sun's doing. It comes, it goes. You need to be able to do it on the fly as you're going. However, there are a couple of things you're going to need to bear in mind. And variable ND filters do have a chance of doing color casting or a vignette. So the higher the quality of your ND filter, the less vignette and color casting you're going to get. And there are various different brands out there for you to consider. Obviously, we've got Lee filters, which is one of my personal favorites. So how do you choose the right ND filter for your camera? Well, there's pretty much, again, two options. You can either choose the round ones that quite literally thread onto the front, just like a UV filter or a polarizer. And the alternative is to have one that quite literally slides in front of it and has a cage that you can slide in and out. It, again, comes down to which one you would prefer. The ones that slide in and out do tend to obviously then fit multiple lenses, because it's not sitting on the front of the lens, so it enables you to use them across multiple lenses. So if you are a person that likes to mix and match, then obviously a square filter might be the best one for you. However, if you pretty much stick to like 2 or 3 lenses, then you might just want to pick yourself up a couple of these and you'll be able to go from there. Now, you can get them for your smartphone. You can get them for obviously drones. So the best ND filters overall, you're looking at a Tiffin variable ND or a B and W. They're great. Freewell do a beautiful magnetic quick swap system, which is great if you're on the fly and want to be able to do changes. Moment Do an ND filter for your phone. They're great. Z filters are great for photography. The nice size square filters, they're great, but a little bit more on the expensive side. And then obviously, if you're going to do the solar like we've discussed previously, then you're going to want something like a Thousand Oaks optical solar light filter, which is a very, very high end, like ridiculous amount of stops for solars. The biggest thing you're going to have to do is kind of test and experiment to see which ones you like and which ones you don't. For the best results, are you going to want to think about the extra things that you're going to need. It's if you're using a square set, then you're going to need a cage to contain them at the end for you. A couple of accessories you might want to consider to go with your ND filters is a lot of the ND filters come with caps because they've obviously changed the ratios so that you don't get the vignette. So that's something just to bear in mind because this one doesn't fit very well. The other thing you might want to consider is obviously lens wipes to make sure that you can clean them down to make sure that you haven't got any debris or anything on it. Or you can use the brushes. These are quite useful if you've got dust particles and you haven't used them for a while. And then obviously, because you're going to end up with a whole bunch of these, because you always do, you need a way of storing them. Okay, I have this one. I also have this one, and I keep them all in little pouches, and then they can just pop in with your gear. So definitely worth making sure you keep them to hand. Make sure you don't forget them. The other question comes down to, when do you use an ND filter? The biggest things that you're going to kind of want to think of is if you want to do a longer exposure, obviously it allows you to reduce the amount of light coming in. So daytime long exposures for things like waterfalls, landscape, ocean, that kind of stuff. And then obviously you can use them in low light situations if you want to do something like a sunset, or if you want to do night photography, because it allows you again to reduce the amount of light coming in. If you want to do cinematic motion blur, then ND filters can be a great thing because it allows you to reduce the shutter speed and have a smoother motion blur. Or if you're doing summer videography and you want to, and your image is just generally overexposed, it allows you to use the correct amount. So here is a before and after just so you can see the difference. So do you need an ND filter? Well, again, like I said to you, it's about controlling the amount of light. A polarizer will reduce reflections and enhance the colors, but it won't reduce the amount of light coming in. Will it affect your color of your photos? We do have somewhat of a color casting situation, and each brand has a different type that can be an issue. Can you stack your ND filters? Absolutely. Many of them will do it, but what I will say is, especially if you're going on the higher end of a variable ND filter, you will get vignetting on the corners, and therefore you need to make sure it doesn't impact the quality of your image. So you need to consider your specific needs, make sure that you get the right amount of stop for your situation. And this is where things like your sets come in, because then you can experiment with different ones, or a decent variable that I use on my Sony to be able to your video or vlogging or blogging and that kind of stuff. So definitely essential if you're going to do video, especially if you're out and about in the summer. And then for longer exposures or daytime shots where you're looking to do motion blur, this is the next step. So obviously you really should be on the point where you are understanding how things work. If you need to check out my basics, go check out those because it will help you out.